Welcome back to episode 11 of the Mish podcast. We are recording this episode in a slightly different situation than in the past.
It's going to sound creepy.
It is kind of creepy. We're in the van, first of all, and the kids are above in their top bunk. If you guys know what the van setup looks like, we have like a bunk bed situation. We have a how big is their bed up top? Like 60 inches wide?
I think so. It's a queen.
It's like a queen. They share like a queen-ish size bed, and we share like a full size bed down below. So, you gotta be a little used to having less width when you live in this family. Was that funny?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's 5 of us, and they're getting big. We're in a van, right?
Right.
So, the interesting thing is, recently, in the last couple of weeks, I've set up these little mounting points on. Since we're on the bottom, we have about 28 inches of vertical space from like the bottom of our bed to the bottom of their, from the top of our bed to the bottom of their bed. And we have like a 4 to 6 inch mattress. I don't know what it is, but on the bottom of their bed, I've put these like GoPro mounting points. So then we can like clip in our phone and watch movies and TV shows at night. So what we've done with this episode of the podcast is I clipped in our audio recorder to this GoPro clip, and now we're like laying in bed recording this podcast.
I think it's too much information.
Well, I mean, it's their choice to visualize or not.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So that's what's happening. This is episode 11, and we're doing this episode from Thessaloniki, Greece. And we're doing this episode from the parking lot or the property of not a campground, but like a camping store. Like a real popular camping store, actually. And it's on the Park 4 Night app that we use for looking for all campgrounds in Europe. And we're here because we are hoping to swap out our Dometic fridge for a different one. And we basically have been here waiting for the new one to show up. Also, you can camp here for free. They give you free electricity, and there's a bathroom, cold showers, water spigot, and pretty easy to get around. They sell bus tickets in the office. Then you can kind of take a bus to the town and kind of roam around. But we haven't really been doing that just because it's been the weather has been pretty bad. In fact, 2 days ago, it snowed on us. It literally snowed here in Greece. We didn't expect that to happen, but it happened. We're at sea level.
Yeah, we're not in the mountains.
Yeah, we're not. Greece is 80% mountains. We're in the 20% that's not the mountains. We're basically at the edge of the Aegean Sea. And we got like, I don't know, what do you think? Like 4 inches of snow?
No. 1 inch.
No, this is 4 inches.
Yeah, no.
I mean, we had probably this much on the van. Maybe 2 to 3 inches.
Okay.
So basically, that's what's been, going on with us for the last. We've been here for like 5 days. Hopefully, we get the new fridge tomorrow, and then we leave. But the purpose of this episode is now that we're in Greece, we want to talk about roughly about 3 weeks in Albania. Roughly 3 weeks, or exactly 3 weeks?
No, we got there on the 27th, and then we left on the 17th.
27th January. Okay, 17 plus January 27th.
Oh, yeah.
January 27th, 4 days. We left on the 17th. 17 plus 4, 21 days. That's exactly 3 weeks.
Yeah, you got
Right?
it. 3 weeks.
Exactly 3 weeks. We're in Albania. So our last episode, we recorded it in the last place we were in Albania, and we weren't exactly ready to talk about Albania yet in that episode, but we are now because we are officially out, and we want to talk about our experience there. So, yeah, I mean, just to give you guys an idea about exactly what it's like to travel with your own vehicle, with your own camper through Albania. Although we were there in the off season, so it's not going to be exactly what you would experience if you were to go in the spring, late spring, summer, or early fall, because that's really their high season. And I would imagine, though, for those of you that are sort of traveling through Europe like we are, you're going to want to be in this part of Europe in the same time. Because in the warmer time you want to be up north. So even though for Europeans that travel in RVs, campers, you would want to come down here in the summertime to kind of swim in the Mediterranean and all that. But for people that kind of travel extended trips like ours, yeah, you want to be here when it's warmer. So we'll give you guys an idea about what it's like to be in Albania and tell you about all the places that we've been. We've been putting up some videos on YouTube. We have 2 videos up as we speak right now about our time in Albania. First week, the first 7 days we stayed in the city of Durres, which is a port town. And then the next 7 days we were in the Albanian capital city, which is Tirana. And we'll get into a little bit more about that. But basically, we feel like we have a pretty good grasp of some of the more popular cities. We'll give you guys some ideas about it. So let's go all the way back to when we left Montenegro and came into Albania.
I think we talked about this on the last podcast, but we can recap it. We crossed the border. It was just a single border. There was no dead zone in the middle like some other countries have.
Yeah, so what we've noticed is, crossing all these different borders in the EU, if you're going from EU country to EU country, unless you get to an EU country that's on the edge of the EU where that country borders a non-EU country, there are no borders. So Croatia has a border because Croatia borders Montenegro. That's not EU. So there's a border there. So we've been crossing a lot of borders all the way across. And coming into Greece, we crossed borders too. So between Croatia and Montenegro, there was 2 crossings with a no man's land in the middle. But from Montenegro, non-EU, to Albania, non-EU, there was just 1 border crossing. And not to say that's typical, because I don't think there's anything typical about countries that don't belong in, like unions like the EU or NATO or, those kinds of organizations. But specific between Montenegro and Albania, we just went through 1 checkpoint, showed our passports. They didn't check our van. They didn't search our van or anything. We just showed our documents, and they stamped my passport. You and the kids use your European residence card, ID card, and we crossed. So that didn't take very long. There were a few people in line, but it wasn't a big deal.
And then we crossed, and our green card insurance doesn't cover non-EU countries as a U.S. plated car. So the first thing that we did is find the first little pullover spot, which we did. And you went out to buy us insurance for for Albania.
Yeah, so we can talk a little bit about green card insurance, which I think we mentioned before, but
yeah, we did.
Yeah, but let's just reiterate quickly. Green card insurance is It's kind of like a EU-wide liability insurance policy that you can buy for your vehicle. And if your vehicle is registered in the EU, then it covers more countries. But since ours is not, then it doesn't cover countries like Montenegro, Albania. So we had to buy specific liability insurance for Albania. And we had to do that for Montenegro as well. And Montenegro was cheap for like 2 weeks, a week or 2 weeks, I want to say. In Montenegro, it was like 10 or 15 euros. It was very inexpensive.
But not in Albania.
In Albania, what did we pay? I don't even remember. Like
50 or 60 euros.
Yeah, it was quite a bit more. It was 50 or 60 euros, I think. I want to say it was like 59 or 65 euros. And I went to a couple of different ones. Right when you get to the border, once you cross in, there are just these booths along the side where you can, walk in and then, people are sitting there at their computer and you say, hey, I want. And they have prices listed. So, that's the nice thing is that some places you go, they don't list prices. They kind of like size you up when you walk in. And sometimes they give you the local price. Sometimes they don't. But these places have prices listed. At the first place I walked in, they didn't. So then I went to another one and they had the exact same price. So I ended up buying that there. So yeah, it was, we had the option of buying for 2 weeks or 30 days. We ended up buying the 30 days because I think 2 weeks was like just a little bit less. And we didn't know how long we were going to stay. So we bought the 30-day liability insurance just in case we stayed longer, which worked out because we stayed 21 days. But Albania was the first place that we crossed where, we felt there were just a slight bit of strangeness when we came in. Because right when we crossed, the second we crossed, we drove across. We didn't know what to look for. So we found a place to pull over and park so I can walk to the insurance booths to buy insurance, and boom, right away we had like a homeless family walk right up to us, and they didn't speak very good English. It was like a mom and like 3 kids, and the oldest of the 3 kids, which couldn't have been more than 10 years old, and just started like asking us for things. Like the only thing she could say was, I'm sorry. And, the mom didn't understand, so it was a bunch of sign language and gestures and stuff. So we knew that they were asking for things. So I reached into my pockets and gave them all the money that I had. And we had just come from Montenegro, which uses the euro. And Albania uses their own currency, which is the Albanian lek. So I gave them like just a handful of euro. And then, after we gave that, they were standing outside of our van looking in. They saw whatever we had, and they started asking for all this other stuff, which got kind of awkward. I mean, I felt bad, but at the same time, it's like we're new in the country, and we don't know what we need to do. We want to make sure that we take care of all the stuff, and it was really disruptive, and it was really confusing. It was frustrating. As much as we wanted to help, even though I did what I could at the time to help them, they just kept asking and nonstop. And then as I was walking away to the insurance booth, they followed me. They stood outside the booth, and every time they saw me, they were asking for more things. Just really heartbreaking and distracting at the same time. And that was the first time in Europe where we've seen something like that.
Right.
So, that was kind of our first impression, really, of, what we thought Albania was going to be like. And, to kind of give you an idea about the whole country in general, some of it like some of that reflected our experience there, but other things didn't, just because we did some research beforehand, and we know that Albania is one of the poorer countries in the EU. Well, not in the EU, because not in the EU. One of the poorer countries in all of Europe. I think it's behind just a handful of other countries like Moldova, the Ukraine, Kosovo, and a handful of other countries like Georgia and, some other really poor countries. Their GDP is somewhere around $4,500 a year per household, which is really poor. In comparison, I want to say like Montenegro is somewhere in the 6,000 range. So, it's definitely a poor country, and just by knowing sort of, having done some research about Albania is one of these countries that have been really isolated from the rest of the world for many, many years in sort of modern times. It was never in the Yugoslavia sort of union, and it was like one of the Soviet Union like partners. What do they call it? Do you remember?
No, I was reading it. I forgot.
Yeah, it was like, one of the Soviet Union satellite countries that were part of their group. So it was definitely socialist, communist. Was it socialist or communist?
It's communist.
Communist. And they had this communist leader that basically like ruled with an iron fist. And this guy was very paranoid to the point where they had this program where they built thousands of bunkers all across the country. And you can see them when you drive across the country. There's all these little like concrete domes when you drive through cities, when you drive through like the countryside. And some of them are like right next to each other. Some of them are hidden in the hills. Some of them were just like in people's backyards. Some of them were in the middle of cities. They were there because the leader of the country was convinced that other European countries or other Asian countries were going to invade them at any minute, and they needed a place for all their people to kind of bunker down and like fight back. But that never happened, and it cost the country a ton of money, and among other things, that really held the country back. And because it was so isolated, it didn't really trade with other European or Asian countries, and it didn't have any allies until recently when it became more of like a republic. So now it's a country that has like a democratically elected leader, and it's a lot more open to the rest of the world. But all those things that it's done in the past have definitely taken its toll, and it was clear when we drove in, when we crossed the border from Montenegro into Albania. So that was sort of the information we researched before we came in. And the first place we went in Albania, we didn't really know where to go, and we knew we wanted to see a few places. We knew we were going to go to the capital of Tirana, but we thought, well, it's going to be cold, because all the places that we've been recently, even up until now in Greece, it's been cold. So we knew that the best place to combat the temperature was to be near a big body of water. Usually near the coast, it's warmer, because the water really moderates the temperature of the air. So we decided to go to the city of Durres, which is a port town. I think it's one of the biggest ports in the country, and all the containers and the freighters come in and out of there. So we went there, not really knowing what to expect, but it was.
We showed up on a Sunday, and all the parking lots were so crowded, and people were everywhere because it's like a nice sunny Sunday weekend, and everybody and their grandma was out, and it was so hard for us to drive. We got stuck in a little roundabout thing, And then we had like another begging family come up their car as we're stuck in the roundabout and trying to get out. It's so frustrating.
Trying to get our attention. We're trying to, there are people behind us. We're trying to turn around.
Everybody's staring at us.
Right. We're just trying to tell us to go away. We can't deal with this right now.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. So we didn't really have a good place to stay when we first got there. So the nice thing about Albania is that it's really cheap. So we found an Airbnb. And it looked great on the website. It was like 2 separate bedrooms, big living room, big kitchen, big dining room. It had like these great balconies overlooking the ocean. It was on like the top floor of an apartment building. And it was only like $15, $20 a night maybe. It had a discount for 7 days. So I want to say we paid like next to nothing. We paid maybe $100, maybe $120 for 7 days. And the other thing that we always look for when we get an Airbnb is to make sure that it had free parking for a vehicle of our size on their premises. So, and it said that it did. Except the day that we got there on a Sunday, it was packed. The whole parking lot was full. Even people that didn't live in the apartment building were parking there. So we met the owner of the apartment building. He's like a doctor, and he's kind of a youngish guy. He's a doctor in Albania. He owns his building, and he spoke decent English. I mean, we were able to communicate with everything fine. So when we first pulled in to try to find this place, it's next to this parking lot. And we're like, okay, this is the parking lot. So we pull in. And then the parking lot attendants were just these dudes running around, with fanny packs, charging people money. And they're like, it's €5. And that's all they spoke. And it was really hard to communicate. So we pull out Google Translate, saying, hey, we're here. We're guests of somebody who lives in this apartment building. They said that we can park for free. Well, they're like, well, it's €5. You can stay here or not, which is not that big a deal, €5, whatever. But then we're like, well, this is not where we want to park, so I got to figure out where we're going to be. So then we had to drive away, find another place. We had to go shopping for groceries anyways. We got a hold of our host, our Airbnb host, and then he's, okay, I'll meet you back in the parking lot, in 20 minutes. We did some shopping, came back, and I said, oh yeah. He said, oh yeah, I talked to the parking attendants. It's no big deal. It's only 300 leks or 200 leks or something, which it's about 120 leks to $1, which is like less than like half or closer to a third of what they were going to charge us. So basically this is one of these places where they don't post prices, and they kind of look at you and they say, well, depending on who's parking here, I'm going to charge you a different price. So because of our host and his parking lot was full for that day, he actually ended up paying for us to park in that parking lot, and he paid 300 leks, which is like $2.50. And then for the rest of the 6 days that we were there, we were able to move back to the parking lot of his apartment building, and we stay there, with parking right by the door of the apartment for free. So that's how we were in Durres. And, Durres was interesting because there were just a lot of weird things when you drive around. Like, we pulled into town, and then, like, we were driving around. It's like you see this port with like these big cranes that like pick up containers from freighters that come in, and then like right next to it would be just like a field of dirt with some grass, and there'd just be like a guy with the cow, and the cow would just be grazing. Saddest looking cow just grazing whatever grass was there. So it was a really, really strange situation. And what we found out from other people, and since we've been talking about, our experience there, is, Durres is kind of not the greatest place, to kind of be as a tourist. This is like where Albanians who don't have money to go to the beach, and
where ferries come into town and people just,
yeah,
they go from Italy to Albania and then they keep driving. So it was a bad first choice as a city for us as an introduction to Albania.
Right, and we had committed to 7 days at this Airbnb, and when we were there, like, we were seriously thinking, geez, we should just ditch out of this place.
Which we were, because we just needed showers. You needed fast Wi-Fi because you had some work to do.
Right.
So we got
It was decent Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it was fine, but that's why we got Airbnb. There's no campgrounds. We needed showers. You needed a quiet place to work, so...
We didn't know what to expect. So every country that we go into when we don't know what to expect, it's different when it's an EU country, because with an EU country, our Croatia phone plans work right away. So these non-EU countries that we don't know anything about, we have to sort of get in there with some kind of backup plan, some kind of reliable way for us to sort of negotiate our life. So that's what we did in Albania. We went to Durres. But we didn't end up making the best of it. But, this Airbnb was way bigger than the ones that we've had in the past. And it ended up being, like, too big. We had our own bedroom. Kids had their own bedroom. And there was, like, a hallway. It's, like, a big, like, hallway in the middle. And there's, like, a huge, like, living room. And it didn't have enough furniture for as big as this place is. So we ended up thinking that it was, like, way too big.
We kind of warm it up. And it was really cold. And everything was made out of tiles and stone. And it was just, like, we were freezing in there. Like, could we just all move into one bedroom? And that's all we need. But we couldn't.
But I feel bad because the host was really nice. And you can tell this host was really trying to sort of, build up. But it was like, you can tell he's like this bachelor dude. He doesn't really have any kind of decorating sense. So it's like he's missing some towels. His bathroom shower was like the shower curtain wasn't like clicked in anything. It was just barely hanging on the edges of the tile. If you touch it the wrong way, the whole shower curtain collapses.
Which it did on you the first night.
It did on me a couple of times. So, but I still gave him a 5-star review just because I knew that he was trying. He was doing his best. So, with all that said, there were some really cool things about Durres that we did like. It had a decent waterfront area where you can kind of walk up and down. There was, this is the first place that we went where we kind of got to learn about sort of, Albania and its relationship with tourists. And also specifically, like, how do we deal with being at a place where we really don't speak the language? Because up until now, we've been in places that either, like, had a lot of great English speakers, or we were at a place where one of us spoke the language, right? So Croatia speaks Croatian. Montenegro speaks Montenegrin. Both of these languages are practically the same. And you were able to communicate with everybody in both of these countries. And Albania is the first one where we're not able to do that. Not only were we not able to do that, Albanian is a language that is unlike anything else. It is in its own branch of the language tree when it comes to, like, European languages. And it really, like, we couldn't understand a single word. And the vocabulary looks totally different. So it was really sort of a crash course into sort of figuring out how do we deal with, communicating. Fortunately, I think, where we were, like some of the restaurants that we went, we were able to figure out how to order things, and enough places. Albania is one of these countries that's kind of up and coming, like tourism wise. A lot of people come from Europe to Albania because Croatia has gotten kind of expensive, and Montenegro is sort of up and coming. So Albania is the next sort of up and coming coastal country. It doesn't have like a ton of coastline, but it's large enough. Actually, I don't know how it doesn't compare to Croatia. It has a longer coastline than Montenegro, I think. So, being that it's geographically in a cool place in the summer, it's got most of its coastline in the Adriatic and part of it in the Ionian Sea. It's getting real popular with Europeans. And because it's so cheap, the combination of it being on the coast and being so cheap, it's making it more and more popular. So, because of that, a lot of the places are, where other Europeans are coming to sort of vacation, they're speaking, more and more of them are speaking English every day. So, even when we went to a place where the person that we talked to didn't speak English, they were able to grab one of their coworkers that spoke some to kind of help us out. So at restaurants, at ice cream places, at grocery stores, at maybe some of the grocery stores they didn't speak it, but at the very least they can scan what we're buying and show the price and tell us how much we pay. So that all kind of worked out. So Durres was not. I wouldn't say if you're going to go visit just one place in Albania, Durres definitely would not be the place to go. But it was a good place for us to kind of get our feet wet in Albania.
Maybe. I mean, we said we were going to leave after like 2 or 3 days. And then we're like, okay, we'll stay a couple more. And then we ended up staying that whole week.
Yeah, well...
we found stuff to do.
Right.
And we got, we had like bumper car rides.
Yeah, because we went to... Yeah, because they had this whole kind of like carnival scene along the waterfront.
Most of it looked pretty sketchy, so we didn't want the kids...
It was all sketchy. Yeah, it was all sketchy. And the fact that they have these bumper car things that basically have live electrical wire connected on the top, and it was raining half the time we were there, and they didn't put them away. It was sketchy. But, we went to an ancient, Roman amphitheater that they had just recently excavated, in the last 50 years. That was really cool. And they had a archaeological museum that we went. It had amazing stuff in there, and it was super cheap. It was like $1 an adult, and the kids were free. So we went to these places for they were essentially like national parks that cost next to nothing. And food was... Albania has been the cheapest country that we have visited since Europe, by a long shot.
Right.
Cheaper than Croatia, cheaper than Montenegro. Probably less than half, if not a third of what we were paying in Croatia. Definitely cheaper than Greece. I mean, we'll talk about Greece in another day, but Greece is basically like the rest of EU. But yeah, you could get, for example, we went to a really fancy restaurant called the Wild West. It was right on the water. It was like a Western-themed restaurant, and it said it had Mexican food, which it was Mexican-ish food.
We were desperate.
We were so desperate, and they had nachos, and we ordered nachos, and it was good enough.
It's good for Albania. It was really good for Albania.
Yeah.
This is how we were in, where were we? Alaska. Is this good? Or is this good because we miss?
Right. Oh, I mean, Mexican food in Alaska is like a dream compared to that.
But we went back 2 or 3 times.
We went back at least one other time. So we ate there definitely at least twice. But it was cheap. It was a fancy restaurant. We were one of the only people there. And the second time we went, there was a table with some other American or Canadians that were there. But those were the only other, I think, English-speaking people that we came across while we were there. But of course, we were there in the off-season. But family of 5, every time we went, we ordered food for everybody, drinks for everybody, and it was probably around $20.
Yeah.
Probably.
25 maybe.
In the U.S., it would be, drinks, when you add beers and sodas for the kids, a restaurant like that would
5
easily
entrees.
be like $50-$60.
Easy.
Right? Maybe more. So this is like $20. So we're talking less than half, maybe a third again of what it would cost in the U.S. So very easy for Americans to visit Albania, not only because of the cost, but also because that Albania is a very strong U.S. ally nowadays. They went through years and years and years without being allies with anybody, very isolated. But now they're trying to work out alliances, just to kind of be more social in the world economy. And there's the U.S. embassies there are massive, and they have great relationship with the United States. U.S. citizens can go to Albania and be there for a full year without a visa, which is better than pretty much anywhere else in Europe. So if you want to just kind of get away and not have to deal with kind of paperwork, you just want to kind of live somewhere in Europe for upwards of a year, Albania, I think, is your spot. So that's Durres. After Durres, we had been, just because of our experience there, we thought, like, what do we do? Like,
We're unsure of a whole country because of a not so great experience in one city.
Yeah.
We didn't want to leave that bad taste in our mouth.
But it got better even during those 7 days. I think towards the end of those 7 days, we're starting, like, part of our experience there. Because, it's like what we tell people, like, what do you think about going to a country where you don't speak the language? Like, you cross the border, and then you have this really tense experience at the border with the border agent, and they check your passport, they size you up, they look at you, and you kind of get a sigh of relief when you cross. And then from that point on, like, it can get better or it can get worse, but every positive experience that you have with the local, like, it makes it better. So as the days went on, I think, like, we went to the grocery store, we got some food. Like, I think in Durres, we were really suspicious of the quality of the meat.
There's some sad-looking chicken meat. I didn't
want to eat any meat. The chickens were really sad-looking. Yeah, I don't know, because when you're in countries that are part of the EU, they have this kind of free, open trade, and they have good quality food, and grocery stores look the same, and meat and vegetables look really great. But in Albania, like, the chickens, like, they look really skinny and sad, and the colors look kind of funky, and they don't completely process the whole chicken, so there's still some little tiny feathers left in it, so it's just really weird. So we were uncomfortable eating the meat, so much so that we ended up making, like, a big batch of black bean burgers. And then we ate black bean burgers for, like, several days after that, which is great, because we love, Marlene and Ava used to eat black bean burgers all the time when we go to a restaurant, and I'll order a burger and she'll get a black bean burger. But there was, like, we got into just, like, figuring out a recipe for black bean burger, and they had all the ingredients, so we made black bean burger, and then we ate that for, like, the next 4 days. But yeah, that was sad. But then, we were trying to see, okay, now we got to find a bakery, now we got to find an ice cream place. So we found an ice cream place that was really good, that was cheap. We found a bakery, and then the lady there was really nice, really, really cool. We got some, like, macaroons, we got some cookies, we got bread. So it overall, like, it just got better and better, I think, as we went.
Agreed.
So that's when we decided that we're going to stay a little longer. So then the next place we went wasn't that far. Durres to Tirana, which is the capital city of Albania, was only like 30 miles.
It took a long time.
It took some time, yeah, to kind of drive around. We did just a bit of backtracking, but we went to Tirana, and we know we wanted to go to Tirana because, that's their capital city. That's the biggest city. That's where, we would be able to kind of get a little even better idea about what it's like to be in Albania. But
and we also had friends there.
Yeah,
that
right.
were camping friends.
Yeah, so we met this couple 2 years ago in Baja. They're called Hair Ventures. And she's from Ohio. He is from the UK. And they've done a ton of traveling over the years. And now they travel in their van in Europe full time. And I think their plan is to go to China in their van. So they've been, coincidentally, and the timings worked out to the point where, like, yeah, we're going to be in Albania. We're in Albania for a couple months. And then, they've rented an Airbnb. And then she had to fly back to the UK to get some visa stuff done. And then we got there while she was gone. And then we were there, for a few days while she was gone. And then she came back for the second half. So, yeah, we got to spend some good time with them. But Tirana is just like all big cities. There's no real good places to camp. So on this app that we use called Park for Night, we talked to our friends that were there, say, hey, where do you guys park your van while you guys are there? So obviously, they were there for so long. They were there for a couple months. So they had an Airbnb. But like, well, we want to actually go and just, so like, what do you do? So when she was back in the UK, her husband, Jonathan, would move out of their Airbnb and into their van for a few days. And then that happens to be when we were getting there. So they say, oh yeah, this parking lot that we're in is totally fine. It's 500 Lex. Lex is their local currency, which is about 120 Lex. Is it 120 Lex?
I think so.
It's $1. So a little bit over $4 a night. 24-hour period for a vehicle like our van is a little bit over $4. And they're totally fine with you sleeping in it. And I think they don't want you to kind of have your awning out and barbecue and all that stuff.
No camping, but
right.
keep
But
it
you
in
can
parking
sleep
mode.
inside and just, be cool. So we got there on a Sunday. It was packed. It was so full. We pulled in. We're like, oh my God, we can't park here. So they temporarily put us in front of these city buses that are parked in the back, just along the side. And then a couple hours later, towards the end of the day on Sunday, when people, left and went home, they put us in the corner, which was like a perfect spot in the corner. There were like 3 cars, I think, that were like these small Ford Escort looking cars, Ford Focus looking cars, that look like it never gets moved. We parked next to them with some space next to us, and we were able to stay there the whole time, which is great because this parking place, not only are they cool with you staying there, it also has a bathroom, and also has along one side of the wall, it has water spigots. So we can fill up water jugs. We can go dump our toilet. The only thing we can't do is take a shower and plug in electricity, which was totally fine because while we were there, it was sunny enough where we had plenty of solar charge. And it's also really close to the center of town where we can just walk everywhere. So that turned out to be a really great spot for us to be. And Tirana is a pretty happening spot. It's pretty metropolitan. Like I said, it's the capital of Albania. And, literally within a couple minutes of walking, we can be at a grocery store, a park, a coffee shop. I mean, there's a coffee shop just like a stone's throw from where we were. So we could actually, every morning we went to the coffee shop and just got coffee and used their bathrooms. I mean, there was a bathroom at the parking lot, but only the men's bathroom was open and it didn't have a toilet seat. So we didn't really use that bathroom for anything else but to empty our toilet into the toilet. And we didn't really use it. The kids didn't use it. Marlene didn't use it. I really didn't use it. But Albania being so cheap, you can just go to a coffee shop, buy coffee for, God, I want to say like 40 cents. Got you like a shot of espresso.
That's probably right.
Right? It was like 50 leks.
Mm-hmm.
So we can all go. The kids can get hot chocolate. We get coffees for, like $4 for everybody. And then that's also the first place we went where we got like Albanian fast food, which is totally different from Croatian, Montenegrin fast food. Croatian fast food is like sandwiches and this thing called like cevapcici, which is like a sausage. Skinless sausage, or they call like
meat fingers.
They don't have that in Albania. Albania feels more like Turkey and Greece, where they have like gyros and souvlakis and, like meat shaved off, a spit, and pitas. So that's where we ate a lot. And you can get a pork souvlaki, which is like a pork gyro on a pita for like 150 leks, which is a big, pretty good sized meal. A pita just full of vegetables and meat and French fries for like $1.25, and really tasty too. And we obviously, if you have it every day like we did, you get kind of tired of it after a while. But we ate that a lot. We tried a few different sort of local fast food places that had souvlakis, and we really enjoyed it. And the 7 days that we were in Albania, we're in Tirana, we spent probably 3 or 4 of those days walking around, exploring.
Yeah, we try to see interesting things in town. We walked to a pyramid that was built for the former communist leader. That was his museum that got shut down once communism fell there. And now it's just deteriorating and it's broken and graffitied and people can climb on it if they want to. So we kind of went to go check that out. And like the main square in town where they have the National Museum and the oldest mosque and a carousel for the kids to go on. That was really cheap too.
Yeah, so Albania is also one of the first countries where there's a large presence of Muslim population, right? Because Montenegro has a Muslim community, but for the most part, it's still, I think, very Catholic.
Orthodox,
Christian and Catholic. And Croatian is by and large Catholic. So Albania is the first one that had a reasonable, large population of Muslims. So we saw mosques. We didn't really see mosques in Montenegro or Croatia. And Tirana is also, because it's the capital, there's this part of the town that's sort of, the Washington, D.C. part of the country where there's just government buildings. We were in Washington, D.C. before we flew out to Europe, and you go in there and okay, this is where Congress meets. This is where the Supreme Court is. This is where, these different government offices are. This is the FBI building, blah, blah, blah. So they had a neighborhood like that too. So it was very similar, but just a much smaller scale. And it's very interesting to see these deteriorated buildings, and some of these buildings that are being used actively but not kept up. You can tell just because it's a poorer country, they have to really prioritize what they do with their tax dollars, right? So whatever the money government gets, they have to decide okay, do we put it towards one thing or another? And you can tell the thing that they don't prioritize is fixing things up that break, this pyramid that's sort of primarily for a memorial purposes. It's just really deteriorated. It's graffiti over, glass is broken, and nobody uses it anymore, and like it's dirty. They just don't have money for that kind of stuff, because whatever money they get, they have to put it towards things that actually make a difference to the people that live there. So all that being said, though, like I think Tirana is actually like a really cool city. I think it's got a pretty young mayor. I want to say the mayor's in his 30s, and he's trying to make it progressive and happening. So he painted all these utility boxes that run like street lights and transformers and stuff around the city. They painted all these. Yeah, people go and paint all these like cartoon characters on them to make it kind of cool, hip, and trendy. And as we're just walking around, you can tell like there's people really care about like how they hold themselves. People like to present themselves well. And one of the really weird things about Albania that we saw while we were there is like there were a lot of fancy cars.
We've never seen so many fancy cars.
So many fancy. We saw Ferraris. We saw tons of Porsches and countless BMWs and Range Rovers and Mercedes. Like not just old beat up ones, like brand new ones. So I don't really know what that's about, but the rumor is that there's a few things happening. The rumor is that like first of all, like people care about how they present themselves in public. So, they would spend money on things like clothing and cars to make themselves like, look nice when they go outside. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is the rumor, and I don't know how true it is that a lot of stolen vehicles out of the rest of Europe like end up in Albania and they go in the black market and they get sort of bought up, at a low price. But that doesn't make sense to me either, because like who maintains this? Because it's not just buying these cars; they're expensive to maintain too. So that's got to be maintained by somebody. And then the third thing that I heard is because that its proximity to Italy, it's sort of become like this funnel of illicit drugs from outside of the EU into the EU. So I suspect that there's some illicit money being made, through that. And there definitely seems like a big like income disparity between the people that drive all these nice new cars versus like these people that work at these bakeries that make probably very little money.
Or we see a lot of trash cans, like people picking in trash cans and sorting the cardboard and the aluminum and burning of trash.
Yeah, just to get money for recycling.
We saw a lot of that in Durres. Those trash cans were always empty, and not because of trash trucks. It's 'cause people clean. Yeah, pick clean.
Yeah. All the metals for sure, that all the aluminum is the first to go, and then all the recyclable plastic is the next to go. So yeah, I mean it's definitely a country that has a huge income disparity. There's people that have money, and then there's lots and lots of people that don't have money. I want to say the GDP. Did I already say this? I think it's about a little over $4,000 a year, which is, you compare that with the poorest state in the United States, which is like 10 times that. So, it's eye-opening, but our time in Tirana was great though, because we were there for 7 days, and for like the first 5 days, we didn't go to the lake that was right next to us. Literally,
so close.
we could have just like fell, to one side, and then our head would be next to the lake. But we always walked the other way because everything else was the other way. So the last 2 days we decided to go to the lake and check it out, and it was like an amazing place. It had this massive playground, and there were so many people there. Obviously, we were there on we first got there on a Sunday, so then the last 2 days there was also the weekend. We left on a Sunday, so Friday, Saturday, and then maybe a little bit on Sunday, we went to the lake. This playground was awesome. Had like obstacle course, had like a climbing wall, had a basketball court, had a zip line, so, and the cafes were like off the hook. People were always hanging out, drinking coffee. And that was also like the first time when we went to the lake, we overheard people speaking English. Because before that, we were just walking around like we didn't understand what anybody was saying. So yeah, the artificial lake is what they call it, which is the man-made lake. It's, we call them a reservoir in the U.S. in Tirana. It was great. We saw Eurasian coots. We saw geese. We had a great time there. And then the first day we walked over there to the playground, and we're just walking around with the kids. The kids are playing the playground, and like we walked by the basketball court, and this like 13, 14-year-old Albanian kid, said, "Hey," he didn't speak that great of English, but he's like signaling me, "Hey, let's play some basketball." So I ended up like playing one-on-one with this kid on a 9-foot rim basketball with him, and he was like, you can tell he's big into just all the different basketball stars. He's even into like street basketball. He knows about the professor. He was like doing moves like the professor. He was really it was really fun to play, but at the same time, I hurt for so many days afterwards. I'm lucky I didn't break something when I was playing. Of course, I was wearing the wrong shoes, jeans, and totally the wrong clothes. I didn't have a shower, so it's probably not the best move.
No.
But I had a good time. But I was winded. I was winded for quite a while afterwards. But yeah, that's Tirana. Tirana was I want to say it was probably one of the best stops, during our 3 weeks.
Top 2 for sure.
Top 2. But our next stop after Tirana was really great too. So after Tirana, we left after a week. And so we paid 3,500 leks to stay in this parking lot. So that was like a little over $30 to stay 7 days. And it was, the best thing about that place is like I felt safe. It was secure, and I felt safe leaving the car, walking away from it, going into town.
Mm-hmm.
Which is always something that I worry about. It's like, okay, if we just park on the side of the road and we walk away, you hear so many stories about people breaking into your car. And just, everybody we talk to, so, oh yeah, this happened to me, or this happened to somebody I know. But places, that place, I felt safe walking away from it. So the next place we wanted to go, as we were going south, we had to decide if we were going to go like inland or to the coast, or sort of go to another place. We decided to go to the town of Berat. And Berat is a UNESCO heritage site. Small town. They call this the City of 1,000 Windows. It's next to a river, and there's a castle on the top of the hill. What else do you know about Berat? Like historically?
It got taken over by different empires, and that's why it has like a unique, the Ottoman Empire, and then I can't remember now.
Yeah, so a lot of these countries in this region was over its history has been part of the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, and what's the other one? Let's see. Berat specifically. It's the 9th largest city by population, and it is UNESCO Heritage Site. The south of the country is surrounded by mountains, and to the east, to the east of Berat was a national park that we didn't end up going to. The Osum River runs through the city, and what was really cool about Berat is there's this, like, we went to the place that we stayed at was this campground. And we drove into the campground. We thought this town was like so little and tiny. Like, oh my God, this is like, there's nothing here. We drive through this like weird little neighborhood, and we pulled into the driveway, and then we end up in this courtyard, and nobody was there at this campground. And then somebody comes out, and we talk to them and say, hey, we're going to stay here. Is it okay? He said, yeah, no problem. You can park over here, plug in. And then, we just kind of figure out where the store is to buy groceries and where to buy vegetables and fruit. And what we didn't know is, like, around the bend from this is actually where the city is. And there's a pretty big, I want to say 60, 70,000 people live there.
So as soon as we got to that campground, I know you were feeling sick that day. You're like, oh, we're just at this campground. We can shower and we can relax. And we were excited also to be there because it was like our first place where we can take out our camping chairs.
Oh, yeah,
parking
that's
lots,
right.
we couldn't.
Right. We were trying to be discreet.
You have to be discreet.
Right.
But as soon as we got there, the owner brings like a clear water bottle out with 2 like crystal shot glasses.
Oh, yeah.
And you have a stomach ache, and I'm like, oh no.
That's right, because I've gotten kind of sick the night before we left Tirana, so I was still kind of getting over that. But yeah, it was the owner, the person that we talked to when we first got in. I think he kind of runs the place. And then I think it was either his dad or a father-in-law or something. He come over here, and he's like, Rakia! He pours me Rakia. So in Croatia, people make Rakia too, which is like moonshine. So he comes over, and the classic thing about these kinds of moonshine that they make in these southeastern European countries is that it's always in a bottle that doesn't look like it should be in the bottle. Sometimes it's in like a plastic rubber or plastic water bottle. Sometimes it's in like
Fanta.
Of either a Fanta bottle or like some kind of wine bottle that you think it's some kind of wine, but then you pour too big of a shot into your glass thinking it's wine, and you regret it. But this was actually really good. So yeah, I mean, the people there were super nice. The whole time that we were there, I think we were there like 5 days.
Yeah, it was 4 nights.
Yeah, so the wife of that older man that gave me the moonshine shot at the beginning came over several times to just kind of talk to us. I think she was, maybe she was trying to practice her English, but she was very interested. She was talking to you a lot. Mm-hmm. And she was talking to us. She was telling us about, in the summertime, like how many people come here, how many people love coming here. These Italians come, and then they drink a lot of, alcohol at night, and then they sing, and then all these people from different countries come here, and they become friends. So I think she was really proud of, like the different diversity of visitors that they get at this place. So Berat ended up being a really nice stay too, and to get up. So where we were staying, we had great view of the castle on the top of the hill, and you can look up from where we were staying, and the castle is probably 40, 50 stories up.
Yeah, I think
it's probably 40 stories, because when we walked up there one day on one of the windiest days.
It was crazy.
It was crazy windy. On your phone, it shows you how many miles we walk and how many stories we climbed. It said like 44 stories or something.
Yeah, we did like 5.5 miles that day.
Yeah.
But we did a little extra trek around town.
Yeah, so the first day we sort of walked around, we started walking and it started to get rainy. But we walked by the Ilsum River, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
We walked by the part of town that's called the City of 1,000 Windows, because there's all these white buildings built against the hill, and all of them have a bunch of windows. And then as you walk along the river, you can see them all. And there's all these locals that are fishing in this river, and they all have like the most massive fishing poles I've ever seen in my life. and really, I don't remember seeing anybody catching anything though. That's the only funny part. So so the day that we walked up to the castle of Berat, it was pretty cool because we didn't really actually know what was up on top besides the castle, but up on top, inside the castle walls, is the town where all the people used to live. You know, kind of like the Diocletian Palace in Split, where inside the castle walls there are all these residences that people used to live at.
Right.
And even up until recently, people still live in Split, but they don't anymore. And it looks like Berat was the same deal. There's all these residences that people just don't live there anymore.
But this made it was unique because it was up on the hill. Usually it's just a wall for
Right.
defending. It's never lived in. And this is, we climbed up to that wall, and there is a whole city in there also.
Yeah. And
So that was unique.
it is the off season, and we walk through a whole bunch of little narrow alleys and with buildings and houses and, you know, windows and doors and all that. I don't think I saw a single place that was occupied by anybody. But when we got to the top of the castle looking down, we can see to the right side, which is the part of town where our campground was, and you see to the left side, which is the rest of town. Like, it's a pretty decent size, like kind of sprawling neighborhood. You can just tell that's where people live now. You know?
And we didn't see it till the last day almost again.
There's no reason to go up and down that hill every day when you can just live down there where the stores are.
Yeah.
Because it was quite the climb to get up there. And it was like for the cars that were driving up, I remember there was like one older, like maybe 80s or 90s, like Volkswagen hatchback that was trying to drive up, and they had to like stop halfway, and then they so steep it couldn't go. They had to like pull like back into a spot.
We give up.
Yeah. So that was Berat. I would go back there. Berat was really cool.
Yeah,
I thought
Berat and
was
Tirana
really cool.
for sure, top two.
Yeah. So when we left Berat, you know, we were sort of feeling like, okay, you know, this is like, we had two great places that we just visited. We have 30 days to be here, and we can stay a little longer if we find a great place, but, you know, I don't know if we're going to, you know, sort of try our luck and, you know, find another great place like this. And at the same time, while we're in Berat, our fridge stopped working, which I don't know what was happening. And, you know, it became difficult for us to kind of manage sort of living in the van when you don't have a way to kind of refrigerate your food. Later on, we found out that it was a defective fuse in the plug. But for those few days, we're trying to figure out, okay, so what do we do? Well, this fridge that's not working. Let's try to figure out how to get a replacement fridge, or maybe find a place to fix it. And because it's Albania, we went to a DHL shipping place to say, okay, if we want to get like some parts shipped here, what would it cost? And the DHL lady was like, whoa, you know, you have to pay for shipping, and you have to pay for customs and tariffs to get it into the country. We're like, oh, you know, that's not great. Let's try to figure out if we can get something shipped to Greece. So that's when we kind of decided, okay, let's try to make our way to Greece. So we started to leave Berat. When you leave Berat, if you look at the map, the obvious way to go from Berat to Greece is to go straight south from Berat. But then what we found out by doing some research, and then the first thing that I noticed is when you put into Google Maps, like, okay, I want to go from Berat to whatever town in Greece, even though on the map it looks like the closest way would be to go south, and it looked like a decent road because it's the same color coding as the rest of the other nice roads, it kept avoiding that path. So then I did some more research and I found out that road is really bad. Even though people have said, "Oh, the scenery is beautiful," but it's rutted, it's dirt, it's not paved, and it's cliffs on one side for a big part of the road. I think in other circumstances, when we had the time, maybe there's no snow, we would have given it a try. But because we had no fridge and it was the winter time, we didn't really want to deal with it. So we ended up driving, backtrack a little bit, maybe 20 miles, and then up and around, and we went to the coast. We went towards the city of Lore, and then we went down the coast to the town of Saranda, which ended up being a beautiful drive. And the road that we drove to Flore is supposed to be a better road, but that was by no means a good road either. It was mostly paved. It was pretty much paved the whole way, but there were just good. So much of that road was driving through little villages and little narrow roads, and some of that road was not smooth. It was like asphalted over, but it was like off-roading. There were just humps and bumps and rolls and all over these roads. It took a long time to get out to the coast. When we finally got to the coast, we got onto what felt like a highway, but that only lasted about 30 miles before we got back on these sort of narrow, sort of 2-lane roads again. And then we started going uphill into like this mountain. And I think it was a national park, right? We went pretty high up, went to like 4,000 or 5,000 feet. We got to the point where we had snow everywhere. And then right over that hump, we started coming down this what they call the Albanian Riviera. And it was like just the beautiful switchback road that kind of meandered down the side of a hill. On the top of it, you have snow all over. And right when you go over to the other side, you see the Ionian Sea, which was, breathtaking. It was beautiful. So it took a long time to go from Berat to where we were going, which was Saranda. And it probably took, I don't think it was that long, but it probably took us 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah, took most of the day.
Yeah, it was. We try to not to get to. We try to not to get anywhere in the dark, but in this case, we didn't really have a choice. We got to the town of Saranda kind of in the dark, and it was 130 miles, and it took us 4 hours. Actually, it took us longer than that. It took us probably like 5 or 6 hours because we went out to the coast, and then we went down the coast. The campground that we had originally planned to go in Saranda looked great. And I've been looking at this campground for a while, knowing that we were going to kind of make our way over there. And when we got there in the dark, it was just crazy windy. It was just blowing wind. And we got there, and the gate was closed. It was in the dark. I got out. I went to the gate, and then there was one camper inside, and then the guy came to the gate, and he had a German license plate, and he said, "It's closed. Nothing's here. Nothing's working." And then I'm thinking like, well, how are you in there? How are you camping in there and you're saying that it's closed? Like, all we need is a place to sleep. Like, can't we go in? But it just felt like he was maybe the friend of the owner, trying to get people to leave. So we thought, okay, whatever. There's other options we can try. So we proceeded to try maybe a half a dozen different places that were on this Park for Night app, and none of them turned out. The one that we had really high hopes for was there's this other castle on the top of a hill near Saranda that had a big parking lot, and we drove a narrow road to get up there, and we got to the top. Would have been great, except there were these like kids hanging out because again, it was like Friday night.
Yeah.
So that didn't really work out. So then we had to go off playbook. We couldn't use Park for Night, but then you had found some other website that showed that this hotel had a parking lot.
Yeah. So we drove up and we parked, and somebody came out right away and told us where to park and gave us...
Right, it was called the Hotel Mediterranean. It ended up being a pretty good location for Saranda.
Yeah, walkable to town. There were showers, bathrooms.
Electrical hookup.
Yeah. And Wi-Fi.
And Wi-Fi. And I think they also locked the gates at night. Another weird thing, we were there, the first night we were there were all these cars parked there, and the rest of the time we were the only people in the parking lot.
Well, I think it was Valentine's Day, so people were probably at the restaurant or something.
Do they celebrate Valentine's Day in Albania?
Balloons in Tirana when we were walking around in all the florist shops. There were so many heart balloons.
Really?
It was your chance to buy me something, Deanna. You missed your opportunity.
Not again.
Like always.
As usual. Well, maybe that was it. But yeah, I mean, we ended up, staying there for probably 3 nights. Did we stay there 3 nights?
Yeah, I think 3 nights.
Yeah.
Once again, we were working, catching up with stuff. Right? What else did we do? We walked around. I don't know. I wasn't really feeling... I love the drive of the Riviera, but being in a town that's like a busy tourist spot in the summertime, and just that, I wasn't feeling it.
No, it was totally dead. It was completely empty, but it was weird because there's all these, great water, oceanfront or seafront apartments and with views and balconies. You can just tell every single one of them was empty.
It's so built up also right to the sea.
Yeah.
There wasn't spot to hang out by the water.
It must be super popular, and I think it is super popular in the summertime. We're just there at the wrong time, And then several times we ate at this restaurant a couple times, and right on the water, and tables right up to the edge of the sand, and then on the sand there's all these umbrellas, but all of it was totally empty. And then when we decided to leave, we started to drive south, and we noticed that there was this kind of national park thing about 20 miles away called Butrint National Park.
Mm-hmm.
And we had thought about maybe checking it out, maybe not, just because we didn't know what to expect. Because to go that way, we ended up having to take this really sketchy looking ferry across just a short stretch of water. Mm-hmm. And to go all the way around would mean we add another 30-40 miles. But we ended up going anyways, which I think it ended up being really cool because this place is this Butrint National Park ends up being one of the most visited national parks in all of Albania.
It was a good choice. The kids really liked it. We enjoyed it. It was a good stop on a border crossing day.
Yeah, so it was an ancient city, and it was used by the Romans. It was used by the Byzantine Empire, by the Ottoman Empire. I think it was built by Julius Caesar.
It was taken over by him and then built as a place where veterans of his army could retire and have their own city. And then his son Augustus kind of took it over again and tried to build it out. And something about an earthquake or something. I don't know.
Yeah, so this was one of the places that's really well preserved. And, we took a tour, self-guided tour. We, it was really cool. We kind of started to get I felt like when we were walking through it that we were getting a glimpse of what, like, walking around Athens would be like.
Way less people.
Except way less people.
So I think it was a good, like, introduction.
Right. There was nobody there. We saw maybe, like, 3 other people while we were walking around there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really cool, and then we ended up, afterwards, we got on this little ferry barge thing, which is not a boat. It was just a floating barge that was pulled back and forth across this short channel by like a couple of electric winches that went back and forth.
It was kind of expensive.
It was 10 euros to go maybe 50 meters.
It was our car size.
Yeah.
I think usually it's like $2.
Well, yeah, because when I pulled on there, it would fit maybe 2 of our vans on there. I pulled on there, and then the guy who was like operating it, and he just looked at me. He's like, "Pay." I was like, "Oh, that's kind of rude," but he probably isn't trying to be rude. This is just what he knows. I'm like, "How much?" He's like, 10 euros. And I felt at first I was like, "Well, this is like, these are gringo prices." I'm like, okay. I gave him like a 20 or a 50 maybe. He's like, waiting for my change. He's like, okay, go. And like, he didn't have change is what I realized. I was going to get change when I got across the other side. And I was like, okay, then maybe I'll pay that guy when I get over there so you're not holding on to my money. Because clearly you're trying to rip me off. Then I get across to the other side. I give up. I get across to the other side. Oh, it's on the wall. The prices they are listed, just not on the site we came from. Yeah, it's 10 euros for a van like ours, which is very expensive. But, we were really close to the border of Greece at this point. So I think they're just, things in Greece are a lot more expensive. So if you're coming up from Greece to check out this ancient ruin, you're probably not thinking twice about paying 10 euros to cross this little bridge. So this is this was almost exactly 3 weeks in Albania. And shortly after that was our last day there. We drove across the rest of the way to the border of Albania at the border crossing. And border crossing was interesting. We've not had our car searched at all this whole time. I'm assuming they did some searching or scanning maybe when we shipped our van into Belgium, but up until this moment, we hadn't been there when somebody asked to look through our stuff. But at the border crossing, when we're leaving Albania, and this is not even into Greece, because I know the EU has some issues with you're a part of the EU, but you border a non-EU country, so your borders have to be a little tighter. But this is leaving Albania. This is Albanian border agents. As you're leaving, they check your passport, and this is another one of these sort of double borders. Mm-hmm. You go through an Albanian exit, and you go through a Greek entry point. There was the Albanian exit. When we're leaving, we show our passport. They look at all of our documents. Say, okay, you drive back around to this place. We have to search your car. And then we pull to this place, and they come in. They search our car. They look all over our car. They open all the doors, and they had the dog sniff it. So I don't know what's going on. But then later on, I kind of realized, well, the government must be trying to kind of crack down on this kind of drug trafficking thing, that they're becoming known for. And they're probably not too thrilled about that reputation. So before we left Albania, we finally had our car searched for the first time. And luckily, they didn't find anything.
There's nothing to find.
Well, nobody's planted anything for them to find. We don't have anything for them to find. So I was happy about that. And then we left that Albanian border exit, and then we drive to the Greek entry, and there's nobody there. We're like,
it's a ghost town.
What are we supposed to do here? You get out, you're looking around. There's no like gate that prevents you from just driving through. And then we're like looking. It's like, what's going on? And then finally we inch a little bit forward. Oh, there's a guy in this window. And you're just like 2 windows over. You didn't see him, and he didn't bother to make himself known that he was there. You finally go over, you hand him our, like, you know, your European IDs and my passport, and then just like, okay, go. You know?
Yeah.
The Greek entry was way more chill than the Albanian exit.
Before we end Albania, we kind of talk about 2 points. There's a lot more stray dogs here.
Oh yeah, that's right. Up until Albania, it has been cats, all about cats, which is, you know, like, you guys, a lot of you guys know that we had just lost our cat when we came to Belgium. So, you know, we have for the time being, like, we have a really soft spot for cats, and we were really excited and happy to have all these sort of stray cats to kind of keep our company everywhere we went. And also, like, cats tend to keep themselves in better shape as strays than dogs. Like, meaning that if you have ever owned a cat, you know that they're very independent. Like, they're not as needy. Like, they kind of mind their own business. Like, they can take care of themselves. But in Albania, for some reason, there's so many stray dogs. There's just everywhere you look is a stray dog. And for the most part, Greece too. But, you know, since we're talking about Albania is where we first started seeing all these stray dogs. And I think it's because of all the stray dogs, they've sort of have chased all the stray cats into, you know, the darkness. Like, they're hiding. You don't see the cats anymore because there's so many stray dogs. I don't know why that is. Like, why aren't there stray dogs in Croatia and Montenegro?
I don't know.
I mean, there must be, but you just don't see them. So there's lots of stray dogs. And we were dog owners. You know, I've always been a dog owner since I was a kid. You didn't have dogs until...
We got one together.
Yeah, we got one together. And we had a dog before we had a cat. And since our dog passed away, you know, we haven't really considered getting another dog. But, yeah, being in Albania, you know, seeing all these stray dogs. And all these stray dogs, like, they all seem to need so much more help, it seems like, than any cat.
And there's so many craving companionship. Like, we feed as many strays as we can. And, like, the cats will take the food over companionship. But there's dogs that would not eat until we pet them for, like, a solid 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just made my heart, like, ache even more for that situation. Because dogs just want to be around people, you know? That's what they were bred for.
And you see a lot of dogs that are kind of, like, limping on 3 legs. Just because, you know, like, they run alongside of cars, like, you know, like dogs do. When you see an injured cat, it's because it's been fighting with another cat.
Yeah.
You know, for the most part. But when you see an injured dog, it's because it's like it's interacting with human things. So, yeah, like, you feel really bad for the dogs. And some of the dogs, like, you know, like, we've come across some dogs that just makes us want to have another dog, but, you know, like, we're still not ready for a dog. Like, we have no room for a dog, first of all. And, you know, we still got, if we do end up figuring out a way to get a dog, that's like, got to deal with all that logistical stuff too. So yeah, that's new. That's new in Albania. And so far that's been the case in Greece too, but that'll be another episode when we talk about Greece.
And lastly, there's a big trash problem here. I know we talked about like people picking through trash and burning it and sorting through it, but just as you drive and walk in between cities or in the city, there's plastic everywhere. Like it's really bad.
I have so I get a real Mexico vibe with Albania. I mean, for those reasons. Part of it is I think it's also because, generally speaking, it's known that like the water that comes out of the spigot in Albania is not exactly like ready, safe to drink. So when we were in Albania, we used our Life Straw water filter and we filter all the water. And even for when we were in Durres at the beginning, we even boiled them first before we filtered them. So I think that comes into play for a little bit because, it's like Mexico where people don't drink the water. Even the locals don't drink the water. Some do, I guess. But for the most part, they don't. So you go into a little corner store. They're just jugs of water for sale, always. Plastic jugs of water for sale. And because people don't drink the water that comes out of the faucet, they all buy water, then you end up having this massive plastic bottle problem.
Yeah, there's no water purification stores like in Mexico here.
There might be, we just didn't see them.
I guess. The whole country, the whole time we were there, we haven't seen one.
Well, we went there that long. 3 weeks is a long time for most people, but, there may be. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, trash is a problem. Just like trash is a problem for a lot of places in Mexico. Like, we're in Baja, and there are literally places where we just drive through. It's like, oh, this is where the village dumps their trash. And then the wind comes and blows it everywhere. Mm. So, and then, yeah, I mean, we were watching some YouTube videos that talks about how for the longest time, Albania was the country that imported a lot of Western Europe's trash. And there are these companies that like try to recycle them. But then, in the recent years, they've banned that. The government of Albania didn't want to be that anymore. They didn't want to be the country that imports in all the trash. But all these companies that are now that have been recycling all this trash to make money have figure out ways around it, and now they're saying, oh no, we're not importing trash, we're importing raw materials.
Just like one country imported like toxic waste.
Yeah,
we were watching that YouTube video. I forgot which country it was. I'm like,
yeah, it's bad. So that was so going back to the beginning of this podcast, like that was sort of like our intro to the country when we first went to Durres. We saw a good part of that because that was the biggest port of the city, or the biggest port of the country, where all that stuff was coming in. So, we didn't come into Albania with like a super amazing like impression, but over our course of 3 weeks while we were there, we saw some amazing parts of the country. And, towards the end of my 3 weeks, like, we had to go into Greece to deal with our refrigerator problem, but at the same time, I was a little bit sad to leave. Like, I was kind of comfortable at that point. I was ready to spend some more time, especially because I knew that going into Greece, it was going to be another country where I don't speak the language. But even worse, I can't even read the characters of their words. So
you'll survive, Dan.
At the very least, in Albania, they use letters that I recognize, and I can type it into Google Translate to figure out what it means.
Are you sure it's not because it's way more expensive in Greece?
Well, it is way more expensive in Greece too. So I did enjoy how affordable everything was in Albania. So if any of you have considered coming to Albania, I do recommend it. But know that there's some things you just have to kind of think about. There's trash problem. You have to be comfortable seeing some of this income disparity stuff, but that plays into your advantage. Like people, the the tourism industry has been booming in Albania. There's millions of people that are visiting Albania every year, and it's growing. So you can tell a lot of places you go in Tirana, even in Durres, and Saranda has always been a real popular tourist destination. Because it's on the Mediterranean and because it's really cheap. The combination of those two things have made it more and more popular every year. And because that they're no longer under communist rule, and they're, instead of being this very isolated country economically and politically, they're reaching out. They're trying to become more social, right? They've gotten Facebook accounts and Instagram accounts, and they're maybe going to start doing some YouTube videos. They're trying to reach out and be friends. But, all joking aside, Albania is in this kind of very sort of critical geopolitical area where you're in between the Middle East and Europe. And you're also sort of between Russia and Europe. So all these like big countries, these powers of the world, the Chinas and the Russias and the United States, they're all trying to stake a claim in these very critical geopolitical regions. Like Montenegro clearly has taken, I don't know if we talked about in our Montenegro episode, it's taken on some loans from China that they probably won't be able to pay back. So it's now indebted to China. So it's sort of in bed with China in those sense. And Albania is sort of where the United States have kind of grabbed a foothold, has become a strong ally. And we've seen American flags flown in front of several businesses.
The first restaurant we went to in Albania, we're like, well, that one has a U.S. flag flying, so let's go there. Maybe we'll understand something.
Yeah, and that was also when we first found out, this place is really cheap. So, yeah, we had a good time in Albania.
Yeah, I did too.
We got into a bit more detail about what it was like. And, depending on how you what your impression is based on what we said, hopefully it's not negative, because it didn't mean it to be negative. I just wanted to be honest. I wanted to kind of come out and just kind of say it like it is. But it's a country that I would definitely go back. And I think it's going to get better. Everything that we talked about that may sound negative will definitely get better. And the things that sound positive will for sure get better. And the only thing that may get worse is it might get more expensive. As a cheap guy to the next cheap guy, I would tell you, the sooner you go visit Albania, the better. Because it's only going to get more expensive from here. Right?
Right.
So that's it. That was episode 11 of the Mish podcast, where we sort of explore Europe and tell you about our experiences. And that was the Republic of Albania. We had a great 3 weeks there. And, if you guys have any questions, feel free to let us know. And we would love it if you guys can go to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating on our podcast page on iTunes. You can find that at malamish.com/podcast. And there should be a link on the menu that takes you to our iTunes page. We would really appreciate if you give us a 5-star rating. And also, if you have any comments about it, feel free to leave a comment there as well. But until then, I think that's it.
Yeah, right? Thank you for listening. Nope. Oh, I guess if you're on Instagram and want to see Albania-specific photos that we took, for every country, we're doing a specific hashtag. So if you go to hashtag #MollyMish in Albania, you can see photos from our main account and our personal accounts as well.
Yeah, and we're doing that for all the countries, in fact. So that goes for Montenegro, Croatia, and actually every country. It's hashtag #MollyMish in the name of the country. So MollyMish in Greece, MollyMish in Albania, MollyMish in Montenegro, MollyMish in Belgium. So wherever the photo's taken, we'll hashtag it with that. And if you want to see them all, in one hashtag. They're all tagged Molly Mish in Europe. So that's it. Right?
Right.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Molly Mish podcast, and we hope to see you guys in the next one.
You're not going to see that. Bye.
We won't hear from you either, really. But okay, bye.